Mr. Dave Levy here. I was going to give you a brief overview of Xcode, the software used to create applications. So applications specifically for the iPhone, iPad, Mac. Well, where do you get Xcode? Go to your favorite internet browser, go to developer.apple.com/Xcode and download it for free. Just get started making apps. Now, if you want to sell apps on the App Store, then you got to sign up with Apple as their developer account, with a developer account in Apple. And that's going to cost you like $100, 107, I think, or something like that lately. So once you download and install Xcode, it makes this little hammer icon. And first time you click it, it's going to give you a window that's a little confusing, I think, maybe slightly. And this section over here is basically like recently made apps you've recently loaded. So it's like recent files. You see I was working on a very interesting app called Freewaharawa. So you could just launch one of these and get started, or you can get started with a playground, or create a new Xcode project, or check out an existing project. These are buttons. They don't look like buttons, but they are. You can click them. Playground is for experimenting with code like Swift. So experimenting with Swift coding. It's a good place to test out coding theories, learn about coding, but that's not where you make apps. Where you make apps is in the Xcode project. Create an app for iPhone, iMac, iPhone, iPad, Mac, Apple Watch, or Apple TV. This bottom button, check out an existing project. Don't click that. Do you know why? Because I've never clicked that before and I don't know what happens when you click it. You see, I don't have, or I don't think I have an SCM repository, unless Git is SCM. I need to look that up. Oh, source control management, is that what that means? Oh, maybe I do have Git. Anyhow, don't worry about this button. I never click it, nor should you. It's total baloney. It's probably really useful, and I probably should have known about it long before. Okay, let's get started with the playground just to see what playgrounds are like. It's going to want you to name it something. I'm going to name it Wii. I don't know if I can use exclamation points. And you can choose your platform, iOS, Mac, or tvOS. iOS is for iPhones, iPads. Mac is for Mac software. tvOS is for Apple TV. And we're making iPhone stuff and iPad stuff, so let's do this. It's going to say where do you want to put it. I'm just going to put it in this folder. When you create it, it's going to make a little .playground file on your computer, which you can keep or delete as you wish. All right, so here we go. This is playgrounds. Yay. You'll see it's thinking. That's the spinning icon here. But what it's thinking about is here's some code, and then it's going to execute that code over here. So while it's thinking about it, let's do some more code. Let's say there's some number. Oh, let some number equal. Oh, already we're learning things. See this jazz down here? If you see like a bunch of stuff like that, that means that your code is not compiling, that there's a problem. See the red exclamation point? That means there's a big problem. Okay, so let some number, in this case the problem is it doesn't know what the number is going to be, so I'm just going to give it a number. That's a pretty big number. I hope it's cool with that. Yep, it's cool with that. All right, so I got one number. Let's make another number. Let another number equal, that's got a U in it. It's not going to like that one bit. There we go. Okay, so you can see it's compiling that over here. Kind of cool. So now you could do something like some number, and you see it's doing predictive text. Once it identifies your text, you can hit Tab, and it'll complete it for you. Plus, no, let's do multiplication. See if we really freak it out. Another number. There we go. Some number times another number. This is the big number. You see, we can't see it. It's truncated there. But if you hit this little eyeball, then it'll pop it up in a bigger window for you. Or you can just slide this out further. This is the, gosh, I don't know what this window is called. But you may hear my daughter and wife playing video games in the other room, and you may hear the washing machine going. I apologize for that. I don't know, but this is where it computes the text for you. There's another place that you might see text, like when you're actually making apps for the iPhone, you don't have this immediate compiling over here. You know, it's not going to immediately tell you what works. So you would have to run your code, and then you would see a little log down here, perhaps, if you do things like print some stuff down here. Then when you run the code, see it prints some stuff down here. Cool things. All right. So this is Swift. This is where you learn how to code. Not necessarily where you would make an app, but you could, test some code in here before you put it in your app. So you'd copy and paste your code from here into your app, perhaps. But very handy, very useful. These some of these buttons you'll see in Xcode, like this one. See, it makes that thing go away and come back. This one makes an inspector pop out and go back. So that'll be useful more when you're developing apps in Xcode. So, all right, let's close out Playgrounds for now. And let's launch the Big Daddy. So we're getting started here again. We hit Xcode, and now let's start a new Xcode project. All right, so when you first start your project, you got to think about, well, where are you going to put this? Is it going to be an iPhone? Is it for a watch? Is it for TV, Apple TV, for a Mac computer, for cross-platform? I've actually never done cross-platform. That's interesting. I'll have to try that. So in this case, we're going to do iOS application. These are different templates you could load. It's not like you couldn't expand your game, expand your single view into a game or into a page-based application. It's just going to start by loading in some useful things for you. So let's just do single view application. Next, now it's going to ask you a bunch of annoying information. Let's make our app, call it Reader. That's Iger. Our app is now called Iger. Team, you might have no team. You might have one team, the team of developers. For me, my team is me. But for you, your team could be none, or it could be your name. It depends on what you provision your software with. We'll have to look into that later. I'm not exactly sure how I set that or when I set that up. Yeah, I'll have to look into that. Organization name, I don't know. I'll just make this Dave Co. All right, so organization identifier is important. The convention for that is your website backwards. So like I teach, and Mesa Community College is where I teach. So mesacc.edu is our website. And so our organizational identifier is edu.mesacc. And then you'll see the bundle identifier will automatically load in for you. And edu.mcc, mesacc.iger. It needs a little Igera. Okay, our app Igera is written in the language of Swift. And I usually design for universal. That means that you could use an iPhone or an iPad with the same code and it would adjust accordingly. Don't worry so much about this stuff just yet, but eventually you might want to include testing if you're developing a full-blown real application. Next. Okay, where do you want to put it? Let's put it here. Now, you can make an additional folder, or you don't have to because it's going to make a folder for you. So I'm just going to hit create. Oh, there was a little checkbox there that said create Git. You might as well just create your Git repository. When you get started, Git is for backing up your progress and going back like to older versions of your app if you screw things up pretty bad. So Git's really important, but we won't learn that today. That's a whole lesson upon itself. All right, so here's the rather Tabi interface for Xcode. There's a lot of panels and a lot of tabs within the panels and tabs on top of tabs. It's a little unwieldy at first. So that's why I thought it might be a good idea to show you what it is and how to navigate Xcode. Okay, so over here are your files that are associated with your application. So all of this stuff put together, when you run it, makes your app happen. This top one is neat because it's got, like an overview of your app. Can you rotate it? Can you not rotate? I just want mine in portrait mode or whatever. So you can change some things about your version number, your build number, the general capabilities. You might have to come back here to do some top level stuff. But that's not generally where you make your app. You usually make your app inside of the storyboard and the code that's associated with your app. So here's some Swift code. App delegate, view controller. It's an important one. A storyboard, And all this stuff kind of connects together. So for instance, here's your view controller, or here's your view. It is a view controller. View controller. I wasn't lying. And in Storyboard, it's kind of like a graphical representation of your app. Now, all or most of the things you do in Storyboard can be done programmatically too. So you could program things to happen, or you can take some shortcuts and type in button, and you drag a button in there, bam. Bazam. Look at that. Bazam. So once you put a button or an object in here, this is the inspector, and the inspector will help you kind of design it. You can increase the font size, maybe change the color. You know, maybe you even want to change the background color. Sure. Nothing wrong with red on black. And there you go. So now if we get crazy, you can hit the play button. It's like run, build and run. And we made our first app, guys. I think we're done. We just made our first app. I'm pretty sure this app will have at least 3 billion downloads Q1 2018. So when you hit run, it might take a moment the first time you launch Simulator because it's simulating an entire iPhone, in this case iPhone 7 Plus, on your computer. Thinking about it, thinking, bam. I mean, bazam, there we go. It's done. We made an app, and it's actually a button. You can click on it. Nothing happens because it's not connected to your code here. So that would be a really good lesson, is how to connect your buttons to your code. We won't do that today because it's a little freaky. It's a little hard. There's a couple different ways to do it, but what I will show you is this. Let's do a print statement here. Print, and I'm going to print we're making apps. So now, when you run your app, the Viewdidload happens first. That's not exactly true. The Viewdidload does not. It's not like the first thing that happens. But for all intents and purposes, for today's lesson, that's the first thing that we have to worry about. Is Viewdidload happens, and then you can set up a bunch of things. I don't know, have whatever start that you need to start, and load your screen up, maybe load some text in, change the colors, just really get that view ready. Okay, so now we're going to hit Command R, which is also this play button. Command R is build and run. And I want to show you what happens when we print we're making apps. So while the app simulator is going, it's going to log that down here. See? Print. So here's a place where you can print out statements. For instance, where I use it a lot is sometimes your code jumps around. You've got a lot of stuff going on, and you want to see behind the scenes what's happening. Like, how far did the code get? Did it jump from this function to this function? And did it get over here? Did it get over there? So I put print statements in my app somewhere, sometimes, to identify how far along we are, or where it's breaking. Because oftentimes you're going to break things. Let me show you how to break something. We're going to break things. You just have to take it with a grain of salt and realize that you should have a different attitude when things are broken. It's like, oh, that's interesting. Why is that happening? Not like, you know, throwing your computer and getting all stressed out, because you're going to, that's what programming is constantly fixing errors, fixing bugs. So let's say you're really messed up and you typed in, okay, and you try to build it. Even before you build it, it might give you this red error and say, I have no idea what hagabagher is. Whenever there's a red dot with an exclamation point, that means there's a grievous error, and it has no idea how to fix that error. You have to look into that. So it won't compile, and you can't run your app until you fix the red stuff. Okay, so in this case, that just is gibberish and doesn't mean anything. But in the case of this, let's do let this device equal PS3. Okay. So now I've got this thing called device, and it's got the string of PS3. All right. Now let's say I get an upgrade. This device, see, it's using that predictive stuff, so I can hit tab, this device now equals PS4. Oh, upgrade, right? Well, Swift is like, well, no, let is a constant. You don't have to know this just yet, but let is a constant, and you can't modify it. Like, you can't change it. But the app or the program Xcode says, I think I know what you're trying to do, and it gives you this red circle with a white dot in the middle. When you see the red circle with a white dot, click it, because it says, hey, you can't assign a value because it's a let constant. But you can click this button here to fix it and change let to var. So it's a variable, so you can make it mutable. So it means you could change it. So if you double click that, it changes the let up here to a variable. Now this device can change. Oh, this is interesting. What the heck's the yellow? Variable this device was written to but never read. Aha, okay. So what it's saying is you're doing this cool stuff with this thing you're calling a device, but you never use it. Like, you could just get rid of it because it's not doing anything. It's not being stored anywhere. It's just useless. So how about if we put the variable in here? Not entirely. So let's instead say this device is now equal to iPhone. Oh, that's not how you spell iPhone. It's like that. Okay, so now it's going to say, okay, cool. You've got this device, and you're making some use of it in your print statement down here. Now we're cool. Now we're legit. We can build and run. And what's going to happen is it's going to print, we're making iPhone apps. Yep, here it is down here. Okay, so you can see these are your Swift files and your storyboard files, and this one here is called that Xcode. I have no idea how you pronounce the XC assets. Okay, got it. XC assets. So you've got Xcode over here, and what that is it's a holder for images, right? So here's a pre-populated placeholder for your app icon images. Like these little icons down here, you could load them in here, and those are little icons that show up on your iPhone when you minimize the app or when you're downloading it from the App Store. You have to come up with all different sizes of icons for all the different devices. But this is also a good place to throw a bunch of other images, and that way they're not like cluttering up your window here. Now you can also group things and folderize things over here. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be folderized on your computer, however. This is kind of like a virtual representation of all the files. But these files do exist on your computer, but if you just know if you make folders and stuff in here, it's not necessarily going to be organized on your actual computer. And then what I usually do accidentally is I'll folderize it on my actual computer, and it'll break the link to it here. So you have to be careful about when you move files around inside of your file folder on your computer. If you start moving things around or renaming them, then it's going to mess things up here. You have to be very careful to, if you want to rename something, rename it here. Don't rename it on your computer. And if you move something, just be mindful that you might have to, fix the path over here. You might have to change it. Okay. Here's a launch screen. This is what happens when you launch your app. Before it loads, it might launch a flash screen here. What I usually do is a black background with a small logo in the middle. It looks pretty slick, I think. Info plist. Every app has to have one of these. Don't delete it. It's got some stuff you don't have to touch, and maybe it has some stuff you might have to touch later. Don't worry about it right now. Not for the first part of this class. Okay, so here's your files, and here's your working space here in the middle. Here's your logging section down here. Here's your prints. Well, your print statements will log down here. Here's a place where you can drag buttons and stuff if this little one is clicked. These other ones, you know what? I never use them. I never use any of these things. I just use these. So select this circle with the square in the middle of it. And then just remember, once you start searching for objects down here, it'll filter things down. So like I just looked for button, and it pulled up everything with button. And those you can't, I don't think. I think it'll be really mad if I try to drag it into here. That would be crazy. Yeah, that'd be crazy town. You would have to drag it into the storyboard itself, which is over here. You may hear my daughter screaming and playing. I think she's playing a Lego PS3 game right now. So this over here is the inspector. which I think we touched on. So when you click a button, it'll bring up the settings for the button. You can change the type of button, the color, the size would be changed in this button here, or this tab up here. And this one's really interesting too. This is essentially the section where you can connect the actions of the button. So like you would, well, we should really worry about this some other time because this could take a whole long time. But essentially you can drag this, and connect it with things. Okay? And you can connect to the code that you write in your view controller. What's important, I think, to note is that, I don't know if I mentioned this yet, so I'm going to say it again. So if you click this tab on the inspector, it'll show you the class that's associated with each of these things. This is a UI button, this is a view, but this whole thing is view controller. And you see there's text in there. That means when there's text up here in the class, it's not just the default view controller, it's your view controller. So you see it says view controller here, that's connected to this view controller here. See, this text is the same as this. It's not, don't worry, this could be called whatever you want. Like this could be called VC or something like that, vc.swift. You rename that. And still, if you go into your storyboard, see it still says view controller here, because this could be just called whatever you want. But what it's really looking at is this class view controller. So it's saying this, when you load your view, we load this Swift file. And this Swift file happens to say when view loads, you're going to make you're going to make one device and call it a PS3, and then you're going to change it to a PS4, and then you're going to change it to an iPhone, and then we're going to print a statement that says we're making iPhone apps. Okay. This is just commented out. So you saw there was like // That's how you comment out your own notes. That's what's called comments. You can do a block comment, like not like that, like not like that, like that. So it's the / that's that's with the question mark, the / by the shift key, and then asterisk, and then you can, anything you put in the middle here is commented out. Important stuff that you might want to remember. Maybe if your code if it gets a little confusing, you might want to leave yourself a bunch of notes so you know what each thing does. Okay, here's the stop button for your simulator. And you can choose different devices here, iPad, iPhone, whatever you want. And okay, up here, this is important too. This is full screen, so to speak, widescreen. This is split screen, so you can kind of do two things at once. This is important when you are connecting your buttons. And then this one is, oh, this is neat. If you saved it and you made some changes, it will show you the changes over here, and you can revert to older changes. I don't usually use it much because I use, well, I don't know why. I should use it a lot more. And then again, these are how to hide things. So you can hide all this stuff and have a nice big coding window. And when you want to use your inspector, you click on this. You bring up your log when you want it. You can bring out your files again when you want it. Yeah, this is Xcode, guys. We're doing it. We're making apps. Was there something else I wanted to show you? I think that's pretty good for today. So download Xcode, start dinking around with it, start learning, start experimenting, and we'll learn how to, I think we should learn how to connect buttons really quickly here. Let's learn how to connect those buttons so you can make your buttons do things. That'll be fun. All right, guys. Catch you later. Bye.